How's it going, everybody? This is going to be a little bit of deja vu, mostly because I watched the last live stream and was not happy with how it turned out as far as the camera angles were concerned. I mean, the benefit to doing a live stream, obviously, is I don't have to do any editing, but the downside to it is if the actual footage is shot poorly, it's just the way it is. So, considering what I was trying to cover last time, which was basically the last steps in getting a club in playable condition as part of this Hickory Golf Restoration series in real time, I realized there were some steps that the camera angles just weren't showing anything. And sometimes I'd try to zoom in and wouldn't realize that I was still zoomed in, and then I'd do something on a larger scale that you couldn't see at all. So, you know, I'm still getting the hang of how to do the live streams. I'm a one-man show here, so I got to man the camera while I'm doing the work. Not trying to make excuses, just trying to say that there's going to be some times when it just doesn't turn out the way that I want, and in this case, I'm going to do it again. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you quickly how you extend a shaft using a scare extension or splice extension. Then I've got some hide glue heating up behind me. And the other thing that I regretted in the last time I tried to shoot this live stream was that I didn't have any hide glue going, so you couldn't actually see that part of the process, which actually, as I realized as I was talking last time, there's some, you know, it's not complicated, but there's some tips and tricks that might help you out. And so I want to try to go over some of that with you. So I've got stuff set up already. I'm going to try to be more mindful of the camera angles. I don't have my iPad down here with me today, so I won't be able to kind of reference that for questions, but I'll try to look at the camera every once in a while and see if you guys have any questions. Let me clean up behind me real quick here. And we'll just get going. So, let me move you over here. And I'm not going to zoom in because I don't want you to miss certain things when my hands are up here doing that or whatever. But I'll just explain to you real quick what we got going on. So the trick here is I want to extend this shaft. This is the mashie shaft that I want to extend a 1/2 inch. So I've already made the splice. This is base. I don't know what the degrees of this would be. Let's say it's 45 degrees. But that's a nice 3 1/4 inch or a 3 3/4 inch scare. And we're going to do the same angle on this piece right here, which is just basically, if I have a shaft that I don't know what to do with or is in a shape that I'm not going to put it on a head, I'll cut it down into, I want to say that's probably just a little more than 1 foot long. And I'll save those for shaft extensions. And that's what this piece is here. The key with this, I've already got it clamped down, so I'm not going to unclamp it. But you want to make sure that the orientation of the grain is perpendicular to the face of the shaft. That's the bottom line anytime you're messing around with putting a head on a shaft, is you want the grain going this way, perpendicular to the face of the club. But in this particular instance, the strength factor for why you want to do that doesn't matter, because this is just the end of the shaft. I mean, we're going to have, basically, we're going to cut around here somewhere and just have about 1/2 inch hanging off the end, and that's going to be the end of the shaft. So we don't need to worry about the strength aspect, but we're making sure that the grain is going in the proper direction for aesthetic reasons. So that explains that part. I usually like to use a number 3 or a number 4 plane. This is my grandpa's Bailey plane, and a number 4 is a little heavier than you probably need for this. A number 3 is ideal because you can kind of use it with one hand, but mine's jammed up at the moment. I was trying to fix it before we went live here, so I'll just make do with the 4. But I'll just show you real quick why the 3 is helpful. The 3 is shorter than the 4. I don't know by how much, but by like that much, something like that. It's enough, though, to make this more manageable because you've got the clamp here. And the number 4, I have to keep off to the side because I'm going to keep banging into it if I try to go straight at it. So that's why the 3 is, in my opinion, a better plane for this job. But I got to spend some time with that one and get it fixed. But anyway, we're going to just dive right in here. You can see I already sort of started here. I'm going to keep bouncing back and forth to refer to the actual camera angle here so I don't do what I did last time. I'll zoom in a little bit because I want you to see as I'm working here. But I'm just going to basically, I should probably do this. I know that the scare on the main shaft is 3 3/4 inch. So I'm just going to go ahead and measure that out right now. Is basically where I want to make sure I stop. I don't want my scare going past that point. So we're just going to take an angle. Eventually it's going to be flat from here to here, and that should match up with what we've got on the main shaft. Definitely want to make sure that your plane iron is sharp. Hickory is kind of a tougher wood, but a sharp plane will go through it very easily. I can tell this one's going to need a sharpening though. I wanted to do this in real time though, as I'm doing it now, because just want to give you an idea of how long some of these steps take. You know, I could have just explained what you want to do and then not show you. And then you might get into it and think, is it supposed to take this long? And, you know, if you don't have a sharp iron, it's going to take you longer than it should. At a certain point, I'll need to move this down here so that the scare is kind of hanging off the edge of that so that I don't keep banging into the bench there as I get lower. But for now, I'm okay. And you notice that I'm spending pretty much all of my time on the very end here. I'm going to get this pretty close, more than halfway to the depth that I want, and then I'll start working on this and moving back. Sure, this is riveting footage right now, but again, want to show you in real time how long it can take, or if you got a sharp iron, how little time it can take. So as you get closer to the bottom, and we're at a good spot to start moving our way back, you start to see kind of an oar shape take effect here. And just to show you the, where did I put it? Here it is. As you remove more, you're going to start to see this paddle shape take form. And that's when you know you're really getting close to the end, when you start to get that sharp point there. But I'm starting to see that paddle form a little bit, so I'm going to start moving my way back. This is where I start to make sure that my plane is registering on this growing flat surface here so that I know that I'm as even as I can be. And this is coming along pretty nice here. You notice too, like I said, because if this is a larger plane than I probably want to use for this, I'm coming at it from kind of an angle, but it still works. Now, I'll just say this, interrupt myself. I've got that paddle shape going on to the point where I think I'm pretty close to the end here, so I don't want to take any more off of this end. I want to keep working my way back without taking any more off of the end. I got a little too crazy here on the end before I got this part finished. So, you know, what'll happen is as you take more off the end here, obviously then you're losing the length, the total length that you originally measured out. So it just means you have to take it back further and further, but it can be kind of a maddening cycle of realizing you're too short here, having to take it back here, and then you go back here, and then you realize you took too much, and then eventually you're down to halfway through the shaft here. Okay, so I just reached my line here, and this is where I want just a couple passes to make sure that I'm flat all the way top to bottom here. And I like to get a level and just test that. Yeah, not quite. I'm got kind of a hump here. So I'm going to try to carefully smooth this out and flatten the whole surface here without making it longer. Easier said than done. Okay, let's check that. Yeah, most of it's good, but it's still a little higher than the very end. So honestly, I think it's just a few passes different. Check that. I can see I've already gone past my line here, so my yeah, I'm gonna have to fix. I've already gone too far. So in order to make this flat, I'm gonna have to even this out, which means it'll probably lose the bottom, the end here, and it's gonna start moving its way back this way. But I got a lot of shaft here to work with. The only trick is I'm gonna get to a point where it's going to be hard to clamp this and still plane. Okay, that's getting closer. You notice I'm just taking a few passes and then checking it, because sometimes that's all it takes. And if you do one more, then you've gone too far. We're real close. Yeah, there we go. All right, now we have to see how much length difference there is between my new scare, my extension, and this piece here. So let's see, how do I want to try to test that? Like this way. Yeah, so I don't know if it's going to show up on the camera very well, but I'm probably 1/4 of an inch longer in the extension versus what the length of this is. So yeah, I got two options here. I can try to go to the main shaft now and make that length right, or I might be close enough in my length with this where I can kind of cheat and take the length off using a file here. Now, this will only work if the end here is really thin, and it is. Like I'm looking at the bottom here, and I've got, you know, probably, I don't know, enough that I can work with where I could probably shape this by hand If you watched the very first video I ever did where I was showing you how I would extend shafts using this extension method, I did this entire process by hand using just a 4-in-1 rasp. Obviously, I don't recommend doing that because it takes a long time. But because I did that originally, I still remember some of the benefit to having some control over how this scare could be produced if you used a rasp versus hoping that you stop at the right spot using the plane. So I'm going to test that. See how close that is now. Yeah. Yeah, that's just about perfect. All right. Yeah, all I had to do was just take off a little bit on the very end here. I got a little bit of a straggler there. But that actually did it. I didn't have to mess around with trying to make this part longer, which is good because once you start bouncing back and forth, you're inevitably going to make one of them longer than the other until you get more practice doing this. And I don't even have that much practice doing this, so I'd rather do it the way that I just showed you. But now we can go over to the hide glue. And I had to choose what part of the hide glue process to show you. And what I mean by that is there's a time component involved in getting the hide glue ready, and I figured it would be better to actually have it warmed up and ready to use rather than show you the steps in the very beginning. But I still want to cover those steps because I think they're important. So this is what I use. I picked this up from Tools for Working Wood, which is based in Brooklyn. And you can buy that on Amazon. I recommend getting the 315 gram strength, the high stress. This is a really large bag. There's a lot of hide glue in there. You're probably not going to need another bag of that for some time. I'm still working on that same bag going on 2 years now. So these are just basically granules. They're to dry. And what you do is, I'll show you this. Here I can zoom in on this. What we've got over here is a double pot boiler for hide glue. So that's a larger container on the outside that's got water in it, about halfway. I fill it about halfway up with water. And then this inner, that's hot. So that inner pot is what the granules get poured into. And then I pour water into that. So basic rule of thumb here is it's trial and error to figure out what consistency the hide glue should be for your preferences. So for instance, if you take the granules, and I'll show you my little container here. Oh, see, this is where I gotta make sure I'm zoomed out. All right, so I've got a spoon in here, and what I'll do is just take a heaping spoonful, maybe like that much. I'll put it into the inner pot when it's obviously cool and dry. And then I'll just take a little bit of water and I'll pour it over the granules just to the point where the water goes above the level of the granules. I'll let it sit for about a minute and then I'll mix it up using a toothpick and I'll see what the consistency is at that point. Having messed around with hide glue for almost 2 years now, my preference is to have it be a lot thicker consistency than thinner, at least in the beginning. And so I'll kind of, stir it around a little bit. And if the granules absorb most of the water, but it's still got kind of, I don't know, maybe kind of almost like a paste-like consistency, then I'll be pretty satisfied with that and put it on the heat. And so I'll have my the outer part of the double boiler. Let me get a glove here so I can grab that. I have the outer part of the double boiler with the water in it heating up for a while. And then I'll put the inner guy in there. And I got that whole boiler, double boiler, and heater set up from Lee Valley Tools. It comes as a full package. I think it's like 36 bucks, something like that, and I highly recommend it. You could try to find an old double boiler in a antique store. I'm trying to see where I might have one in the shop here. You could try to go old school and get one like that. So this is how this one works. This is the outer pot. This is the inner pot. Downside to this one is it doesn't have a lid, so you're not going to be able to retain the heat as well. And yeah, I mean, it's 36 bucks or 40 bucks. Just, I'd recommend getting the whole new package. Just easier to work with. This is an instance where it's, you know, some of the tools that you can get by using old Stanley, you know, Bailey planes like I do. But some things are worth getting new. So let's just zoom you in here and I'll show you what we got going on in the inner pot. Whoop. All right. So I put a little piece of thread on here so that I can open this up. So you see that? And that's the hide glue after it's been warming up for about 2 hours now. We'll test the consistency here. And I can feel that it's got some consistency to it. The tip that they tell you on the bag is if you lift the stir stick out and it kind of drips off like honey, then it's ready to go. And if you can see that, that's pretty close to what honey consistency is like. You'll find, though, that when you start working with this, that, again, it's a trial and error process. You'll think that you've got the right consistency, and then you'll try to work with it, and you'll find that it's usually not setting up quick enough. That's kind of the issue that I ran into, was it wasn't the consistency that it would set in a minute or less, which is why this stuff is so great to work with. Couple benefits here before I get any further. The benefit to using hide glue is that you can reverse it, so with heat. So if I set this joint and I'm not satisfied with the way that it sets up, all I got to do is put a heat gun on it for probably 30 seconds, and it'll loosen the hide glue that I just set, and I can even reuse the hide glue that's on both pieces and reset the piece and then let it cool again. So that's the one benefit to it. The other benefit, and this is a big one if you are restoring a lot of hickory clubs, is when you are working with it in this capacity as a shaft extension, or you're working with it to, you know, in my long nose clubs, this is a scare here that I'll attach to a shaft. If I ever break the shaft and I want to replace it, hide glue is the only adhesive you can use for this joint that you can reverse without breaking or, you know, destroying the club. So epoxy, you know, you've seen me use epoxy on connecting irons to shafts. That's a useful purpose for epoxy in hickory club, you know, repair, because you're trying to make sure that this head stays on the shaft, and you can heat this head up with a heat gun to release the epoxy before it damages the shaft. If you were to attach either this joint or the joint that I just described here of this head to a shaft, and you tried to use epoxy for that, you wouldn't be able to heat the epoxy quick enough to avoid damaging or charring the wood before the epoxy actually got loose. That's why you don't want to use epoxy. That's why they used hide glue back in the day, and that's why I think you should use hide glue for this kind of stuff today. I'll also throw in there that if you have a socket neck, actually, let me find one that doesn't have shaft on it. So this is a socket head that I'm repairing. I took the shaft out of that head using the boil in a bag method, which I have another video for. And now I've got the shaft obviously out of the head. And if I want to reset the shaft in this, I'm going to use hide glue to reset that. I'm not going to use epoxy. If I use epoxy on that, that's the last time that shaft's going to be able to come out of that head, because I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to be able to heat that up. And the boil in the bag method doesn't work on epoxy. It only works on hide glue. So again, those are the three things that you'll be doing with, you know, joining wood to wood in hickory golf club repair, and hide glue is the way you want to do it. So now that I've preached the benefits of hide glue, let's actually try using it, and you can see how, hopefully, how quick you'll get a setup. So first, before we do that, let me put this back on the heat because I don't want this to get too cool. You'll notice too, you get this off the heat and it's going to start coagulating again. Another thing while I'm thinking of it, a good test to see if your hide glue is at the spot you want it without dripping it all over your shop. Take a toothpick and stick it to your stir stick and hold it there for maybe 30 seconds and see if it starts to set. It's not doing, I'm not going to hold this here for 30 seconds because that's kind of silly. I'll just show you though, I mean, if you have the time in your shop to do that and the patience, that's one way to kind of see if your glue is going to set up as quick as you'd like it to. But we'll show you some workarounds for it in case it doesn't, because it, you know, like I said, it's the most finicky thing is getting it to set up within that 1 minute time frame that it should ideally be able to set up in. And a lot of times it takes a little bit longer, and I'll just show you the workaround if it does. Let me clear this out. I'm going to use this vise here. Okay. I got a lot going on in the shop right now. I'm working on basically refurbishing 14 sets of clubs. I want to have 14 sets by the time I go to the Columbus area Golf Heritage Society show in February of next year. And so I've been busy in the shop. All right. So before we join these two pieces, we need to rough them up. You don't want to connect or try to connect two really smooth pieces of wood because it's just not going to work. So you can do that a few different ways, but the way that I like to do it is take a knife, and I basically just like to do a lot of score marks across the scare. And I'm going to do them this way first, and then I'm going to turn this knife around and I'm going to do kind of a cross hatch. And you won't be able to feel the difference, but I'll kind of show you that there is, compared to if you just left this smooth. Another way you could do this is just taking that 4-in-1 rasp and carefully making it rough. The one caveat to doing that is you can easily start to change your angle or make a certain area flatter than another, or just start to mess up what you just spent time trying to do with the plane. But now, if I just take, you can actually hear that, and you can see it too. So it's not smooth anymore. There's enough of abrasive quality to that it's got some teeth to it, and or tooth to it, and these two pieces will be able to kind of join together a lot better. I also recommend you do this when you are about to reset your club, your club head. I didn't do it in the last video because I forgot. But whenever I'm setting right before I reset the heads with epoxy, I'll do this on the cone, especially if it's smooth. Sometimes they're rough enough you don't need to, but if you've got a very smooth cone, especially if you had to modify the size of it to fit into the new hosel, then you'll have a smooth surface like this. And making sure I'm still on the camera. And then roughing it up will definitely benefit. Not as easy doing this with the left hand here. Normally I'd be doing this on my other bench. There we go. All right, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit here. Actually, I'm going to put you over here now because you have to have a stable... Well, you don't necessarily need to do this for this step, but I'm used to doing it this way because it's like having a third hand. I guess you don't need to see on top of that necessarily, but I've got the shaft obviously oriented the way that I want it to. What I'm going to do is take my stir stick and, just show you. So I didn't hold the toothpick there, but I put it on a piece of wood and you can see that already set. So I think the hide glue is good to go. Okay, we'll zoom you out a little bit. I'm going to take my stir stick and I'm going to dip it in the hide glue, and I'll just do that on camera. I'll show you. You're just going to slather it on here. Try not to get it all over your shop like I am right now. You put a layer here, and then I like to put a layer on the shaft itself. Now we are going to hold them in place. So line up. That looks good. That looks good. And now I'm just going to stand here for a minute, and I'm going to hold this with firm pressure and hope that by that point it doesn't need to be held further. But this is ideally why hide glue is fun to work with if you get it right, because I'll be able to hold this here for a minute, and then when I let go it should stay. Now if it doesn't, there's a couple things we can do. We can add more granules to our mixture and let it heat up again, and hope that the extra granules will take out some of the water, because basically what's happening is it's got longer working time than we need. And if you really want to try to perfect the science of using the hide glue and get the consistency right, and that happens, what you've got is a consistency of too much water, not enough granules. So I basically try to get this so that it doesn't have hardly any working time, and sets up, like I said, within about a minute. But it's kind of a magic spot that's hard to hit sometimes. So already here, I just want to show you, I'm not holding that at all, and it's staying where I want it. So I think I'm pretty close. It's still movable, so the consistency isn't perfect. It's not exactly what I want, but it does give me an opportunity to show you what else you can do here in this situation, rather than stand there and hold it for 5-10 minutes. These are clamps. Make sure that's showing up. These are clamps that I pick up at Harbor Freight. They're super useful in my shop. I use them all the time. And all I'm going to do is try to put this on both ends of my extension here. It's kind of tricky because it's easy to move. I'm just going to hold that down a little bit more. Well, I interrupted myself before too. The other thing, so if you decide that the consistency is not quite right, you can scrap this, take it off. You'll have to wait for the hide glue to dry, 15-20 minutes. You'll have to scrape it off, which will probably smooth up your two pieces again, so then you got to rough it up again, and then you take another go at trying to get it to set. If I can get this clamp on without moving this piece, though, I can take this off of the vise and then just set it down on my shop floor with the clamps on it. It wants to keep moving on me. Let's see if I can. Sorry, I'm off camera, folks. I'm working on the floor here. Yeah, it's interesting. There's just one spot here where it just doesn't want to set. It's setting up, though. It's definitely not as easy to work with. So that's what we've got going on here. I'm going to obviously let this sit aside and not mess with it for a little while. But you can see, like, I'm trying to manipulate it, and it's staying pretty good, but it's just a little loose down here still. So I'll let that sit for a while. I'll tell you right now that if this was a head to shaft extension or head to shaft joint that I was trying to do, I would have scrapped it at this point and started over, because I want to make sure those are completely, as solid of a connection as I can, because it's an important one, obviously. In this particular case, because we're talking about a shaft extension, it doesn't bother me so much if I find out that I got to redo this after the fact. But most of this is pretty solid and should stay. Like you can see, this is already getting gummy. So it's already starting to dry. The cool thing about hide glue is also that as it dries, it pulls the fibers of the two different pieces together. So as this gets drier, it should get pretty solid. And we're just going to set it aside there and come back to it before the end of the video and see how we're doing. Because then if it sets up the way I hope it will, I can show you some other things as far as preparing that for its final, its final stage. But in the meantime, I'm going to clean up real quick so I can get ready for the next section here, which is going to be grips. And I hate working in a messy shop, so I'm just going to tidy this up real quick. Let me this on here. By the way, if you don't have one of these or don't have the ability to make one of these, Brad Corando made this for me. And you could try to make your own. If you're interested in trying to make your own, I'll take some measurements and I'll send them to you so you can try to do this on your own. But I also say that you can do everything that I just did by clamping straight to your workbench. This little jig has come in handy more than I ever realized it would. But it's basically just a piece of hard maple that started out like that. I think I took a 3/4 inch drill bit to drill a hole, and then I cut it in half and then just used a rasp to kind of match the radius of a shaft so that these can be used as shaft clamps. And these are really handy. So yeah, if you've got that, and then you've got an F-clamp. I picked this up at Menards. I love these kinds of F-clamps, and I have a hard time finding them elsewhere than Menards, and plus they're really affordable there. So if you're in a region that has a Menards, definitely recommend picking those up. Just kind of tidy up my bench here a little bit. I'll tell you, some people may not like this, but one of the downsides to hide glue is that you'll get it on your hands pretty readily. And it dries quick, though. So it's kind of like when I was in kindergarten and would use Elmer's glue. And then it's kind of fun picking it off your skin. I don't know. Weird thing, but yeah, you got that to do, or that to look forward to if you start using hide glue. All right, that's pretty good. Move these back over here. I could not do what I'm doing with all these, projects at one time in my Connecticut shop. Like my Long Island shop is heads and shoulders way better. Okay, all right, so now I'm going to reposition you guys above the workbench. And again, watching the previous live stream, I was not happy with how I had that set up. So I'm going to take a little bit more time, and I might even try doing a wide angle here, if it'll let me. I'll keep referring and making sure that you're seeing. So I apologize if everything's a little distorted because of the wide angle, but my pet peeve is doing something where the action is happening like this, or it's off here, and you can't see what I'm trying to describe to you because I can't tell that you're not on the screen. So this will be the way that we try to fix that. All right, where's my mat? Here it is. Okay, so the last step of this entire process, well, I shouldn't say the very last step, but it's the last big step, is putting a new grip on. And I've got, let's see, let's try to find one that might have something interesting under it. We'll do this one. So I've got, this is one of the, this is going to be a Scottish beginner set that I'm finishing up. By the way, if you haven't been to hickoryhacker.com, I have a web store there. If you click on the store gallery link, it'll take you to the section of my website where I have all the clubs that I currently have for sale. And I'll tell you right now that it's not an accurate accounting of what I have for sale, because I've got 8 beginner sets that are pretty much in a state where I can take some photos and put them on the website, but I haven't done it yet. So if you're interested in a beginner set, I've got a lot of options right now, even if you don't see them on the website. But reach out to me, thehickoryhacker@gmail.com, if you want to know what I have in stock right now that I haven't put on the website yet. Otherwise, just check pretty frequently what I might have new in the store. And yeah, we'll just dive into this. So obviously, before you put on the new grip, you got to take off the old one. And just make sure you're seeing this. Okay. So I should be wearing gloves. Safety first. I'm always paranoid about stabbing myself with this knife when I'm doing some of these grip techniques. So good idea to have at least something to block the blade if it slips. We got this old whipping here. Some people, I think, try to save old whipping and reuse it. I don't. I just don't see the benefit of that. I mean, if it looks like it's fresh, then sure, try to save it. But some of the stuff's just super old and brittle and not worth trying to keep. Other than that, though, I am trying to save as much of these clubs as I can, including the grip. So this one, I'll say this, if your club is Scottish, there's a good chance that the leather on it and the underlisting is going to be in pretty good shape, and you may be able to save it. If your club is American, then, I mean, all of the shafts are American for the most part. They exported Tennessee hickory to Scotland, so the wood came from America to start. But if the club was put together in a Scottish shop, I have found that the quality of leather and the quality of underlisting, or the existence of an underlisting, is kind of, that's where the Scottish clubs really excel as far as materials are concerned. So, you know, if you, I'm interrupting myself again though, if you find an American club, I'm trying to find a good example of one here. Some of the leather that's on, this may not be the greatest example of it, but it looks close. Some of the economy line clubs that you'll come across that might still be great players, but just were never really sold as like a quality club in the first place, used really poor leather. And the leather is basically turned into cardboard. So when I try to take grips like this off, I'll often just be using my knife and scraping the leather off like that, because it doesn't come off in a full sheet. It just chips away. It's the worst. It takes like 20 minutes to clean a shaft like that. So hopefully it doesn't look like this is going to be that situation. But I just wanted to mention that, you know, be prepared sometimes. This one's actually not coming off great. it's coming off in one strip, which is good, but you can see it's leaving all this extra behind. And you know, it may not be a deal breaker. I'm trying to remember what the swing weight. This is a heavy club, so I'll get to that in a bit. But generally speaking, when I'm taking the old grip off and the old underlisting off, I'm trying to get as much off of the club as possible, because anything extra material-wise down here is potentially going to impact the swing weight. It doesn't look like anything. So I'm just going to take the rest of this off carefully, so I don't want to have to peel. Nope, there it goes. Okay. So I'm going to have to dig at this one here. Let's see, there we go. Let's make sure you can see what I'm doing. So I mentioned that this was a heavy club. What that means is I'm not too concerned about this extra material. I'm actually going to leave it on there. I'm going to put my new friction tape on top of this. And the benefit I'll get from that is it looks like this is maybe a very thin layer of felt underlisting here, and then this is the interior part of the leather grip that just kind of, you know, deteriorated onto that felt. That'll add a little bit of a cushion, and I can get away with that with this particular club. But if I was dealing with a club that I already knew was going to have a swing weight issue by taking the old grip off and putting a new grip on, I would want to be conscious of how much extra material I'm leaving on this, because, and I'll also be conscious of how much friction tape I put on it as well. Before I do that, let me grab the grit. I'm going to grab both of these because I want to show them to you. Sometime this weekend, I will attempt to upload or make live the private unlisted video that shows me cutting these grips out of a side of leather. That was a Hackerbacker exclusive earlier this year, and there's probably some benefit to showing the greater audience of my channel everything I show in that video, but it's basically everything I know about cutting my own grips. And I don't, you know, generally those kinds of videos stay behind the paywall, but in this particular instance, I want you guys to see it because I think there's a benefit to learning how to do this yourself, because you save yourself a lot of money. Nothing against the grips that you can buy from Hickory Golf Workshop, and if you're a beginner, I highly recommend you just do that because it's a step that you don't have to learn right away. But at a certain point, if you're dealing with a lot of clubs and you're working with a lot of clubs and you're replacing a lot of grips on your clubs, there's going to be a benefit to learning how to cut your own grips at some point, and it's super cheap. And we're actually getting up to the time of year where I recommend people go to Tandy Leather if you're nearby one, or you can order it online. But their after Thanksgiving sale, Black Friday sale, is pretty good for leather. And the pieces of leather that you'll see me cutting in this video that I'll release to the channel in a few days, I picked up on Black Friday, I think 3 years ago. And I think I paid, I think I paid like $60 or $65 for the full hide of this leather. And this leather was probably even cheaper, like maybe $50. And I think, you know, I might be off on my number here, but I'm pretty sure I got 100 or so grips out of this leather. And I think I got 120 grips out of this leather. And that's a huge amount of grips. I mean, especially if you're talking about, you know, $650 per grip, buying them through Hickory Golf Workshop or somebody else that's already pre-cut them. But if you're interested in these specific grips, I have them for sale on my website. So that's another thing to check out at hickoryhacker.com. But there's a difference between these two. That's why I brought them over here, what I wanted to show you. I'm dealing right now with a club that's got some weight to it, so I don't need to worry about negatively affecting the swing weight by putting the new grip on. So that means that I can use this thicker leather grip. And this leather is reserved, like I said, for clubs. This isn't the greatest example. Let's find a bigger one here. I reserved this leather for clubs where the swing weight's not going to be an issue. This is 1.25 inches on this end to 1 inch on this end, and you can see that it's got some thickness to it, and that'll create a nice cushion under, you know, with the friction tape on top of this, then this on top of that. I always use them suede side out. That's how I install all my grips. The reason for that is because Harry Vardon talks about discovering that suede side out in a wet condition gave his hands more tack than the smooth pebble grain side out that everybody else was using. So while these may look nicer and when you're holding the club may feel nicer, when you actually start playing with the club, suede side out is my preferred grip, and that's what I put on all my beginners clubs, and all the clubs that I restore for that matter. But I'm going to put this on this, and then if I had a club that the swing weight was going to be an issue, this is the ideal grip for that, because it's still got a little bit of thickness, but it weighs less than this. I can actually feel the difference doing that. It's, you know, grams difference. I don't know what the amount is, but you can tell that this is a lighter grip. And so this will still provide you a little bit of a cushion without adding a lot of weight. But we don't need to worry about that with this. So I'm going to set these guys aside. Put these over here. We can go with the thicker grip. I also, and I don't think these are on the website, these are the only two that I've got on the website right now, but I've got special grips for my gutty clubs that better match the look and the consistency and playability of an authentic gutty grip, gutty era grip. I gotta grab some tacks. Hickory Golf Workshop sells the size tacks you need. So does Bob Georgiade, who goes by Sticks and Stuff on eBay. He goes in and out of stock with them, but if you reach out to him, he'll probably have some tacks. These are the kinds of tacks that you're looking for. Very small. I've heard that these are the kinds of tacks that model railroad guys use. So, excuse me, I haven't checked, but it's possible that if you go to a model railroad shop, they may have these. We'll set that aside for a second. So I've gone over this before, but because I'm doing this in real time, I'm going to just do it again. This is how I cut a grip. So if I know that the suede side out is what I want to play with, this is the side I'm going to make my initial cut. And my initial cut is an angled cut about 4 inches long from this side to this corner that's going to allow the wrap or the grip to wrap nicely around the shaft. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And again, I'm making that cut on the side that I don't want to be facing me as a player. So there we go. I roughly estimated what the length of that is. Doesn't need to be exact. But I have noticed that the closer you are to 4 inches, the better of a wrap you'll get. If you make this too short, it won't have enough time to actually do what the benefit is. So, you know, that's why I do about 4 inches. And that, again, that's on the 1.25 inch end of the grip, not the 1 inch end. This is the bottom of the grip. Before we put the grip on, though, we got to put some friction tape on here. Friction tape. Let's move this over here so you can see. This I pick up on Amazon, and I notice that the price fluctuates, and I don't know if it's seasonal or what, because this is basically hockey tape. But if you just search for friction tape, and this is Duck brand, you'll find it, and it's about $9.99 a roll. And I find that one roll will usually last me probably 20 clubs worth of grips, depending on how much I'm actually having to add. In this particular instance, because I've got this kind of underlisting already, I'm just going to put enough of a wrap of friction tape so that the new leather has something to hold to. But if you had, if I didn't have any of this extra material on here, a couple options would be to do a couple wraps of friction tape and doing, you know, you could do tighter rows of it. But I find all I need to do in this instance is keep the rows close enough so that the width of the leather is touching the two pieces as it wraps. I don't need to add much more than that. I'm going to go all the way down to this part right here. This is where the old grip was, and you can see that pretty easily. And there we go. So we've got our friction tape on. Now, this was the side we cut, but this is the side we're going to wrap. This is a suede side out. So just kind of find a good spot there. I got to get a tack. There we go. Get the tack in place. And then I'll show you this in a second. This apparatus that I've got as a cradle, I bought one of the very first things I ever bought for Hickory golf clubs from Hickory Golf Workshop. And I've had it ever since. I've had it going on 5 years now. So it works out really well. This is a tack hammer. Picked this up off of eBay, and it's an antique. Pretty cool. You find as you get into this, you can find specialized tools for everything. You don't need any of the specialized tools. They're just more fun to have and to collect. But anyway, okay. So we're going to start wrapping this. You know, I think ideally I would have probably wanted to start this maybe a little bit higher so that not that much of the felt is showing, but that's okay. So you see how that angled cut we did helps that start nicely and gives it the proper angle to wrap around the club. Now, before I go further here, two schools of thought with how these are wrapped. A lot of people don't like, I won't say a lot of people, some people don't like the ribs that can occur when you're wrapping a grip. Personally, I like it because it gives me kind of something, my fingers, something to kind of orient to when I'm gripping the club. I don't mind it, but I'll show you how you can kind of get the best of both worlds here. The real reason why I don't wrap them seamlessly is because I never really have perfectly straight cuts. And so if I tried to match up everything, I would have gaps, and I hate gaps that kind of show up in the middle of a grip as you're playing the club. So I just overlap a tiny bit to make sure that I don't get any gaps. Gavin Bottrell, who goes by Time Warp Golf, has a video on his YouTube channel, and if you're not a subscriber to that channel, I recommend you do. But he's got a video from several years ago where he shows his method of wrapping grips, and he can do the seamless method. He's actually got a method of wrapping it, and then he kind of tucks these ribs in. And yeah, if you're really wanting to make sure that your clubs look seamless or your grips look seamless, that would be the way to do it. And I'll show you my workaround for it in a second. But now we're down at the bottom of the grip. And at this point, what I used to do was take another tack and tack that. Well, first I would cut. So you want to cut straight across here. You're giving yourself a little bit of a little tab that you're going to attach to the shaft. All right, so there we go. Now, I used to tack this little tab, and then, well, so I used to tack this, and then I'd have to take this knife and go around the grip and basically shave kind of an angle all the way around so that I could give the whipping kind of a ramp to get up onto the grip. I don't do that anymore, and I got to thank my friend Joey Piatek for the tip here. He just takes a little bit of friction tape, splits this in half. So again, I have not attached this with a tack. I'm taking friction tape though, and I'm going to attach it that way. We're going to go around the club once. Then I'm going to take the second piece and I'm going to put that about halfway up what I just put on there. And now what I've done is given myself a nice gradual incline to climb the whipping up. So that was a great tip from Joey, and I appreciate him sharing that. I think he shared that on one of the videos where I was possibly the grip video that's part of the very first Hickory Club Restoration Series playlist, like the first videos that I put on the channel. But anyway, so now we've got that attached. Now we just need to do the whipping. So if you're in the mark, or if you need whipping, this is what I use. I'm going to bring out both of the ones that I use. If I'm doing pre-35 hickory clubs, I use Crawford. And the key here is 4-cord. That's what you want, is 4-cord to match. That's the period correct weight of the whipping thread on a pre-35 club. If you're whipping a pre-1900 club, you actually want to use a thicker thread. This is, I want to say 7. So we just saw 4 ply. This is 7. And you can pick this up. This is waxed. And you can pick this up on at Tandy Leather or on Amazon if you go to the Tandy Leather store and search for, I think you could search for 7-ply waxed thread, and this should come up. So both of these spools have lasted a long time, even with as many clubs as I do. But this is the 4-cord, and this is what I'm going to use for this pre-35 club. Just make sure you're seeing what I'm doing here. And at this point, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. I don't make a knot there. I just kind of tie that off so that it doesn't move. And the other benefit now to the friction tape, if you ever tried whipping a club that didn't have friction tape in this spot, is often this first loop that you try to make will slip, and you're constantly dealing with that. And the friction tape gives the thread something to hold on to. And also, I haven't talked about this much more yet, but this is the cradle that I got from Hickory Golf Workshop. And I know that some people look at this on their website and say, oh, I don't need that, or I can make that. And if you can make that, that's great. But if you're just getting started and you want something that's going to work right away, this is perfect. It's got a spool right here where you can put your thread. And it's got 2 holes right here, which you'll see me utilize in a second. And then it's got this cradle up top. And I use this thing all the time. I mean, I pound out the pins to start on this rubber, or this yoga mat that's on the bench. But then after I get the pin started, I put it up here on the cradle, and I end up hammering the pin out the rest of the way here. If you've watched any of my videos, you see me use this thing all the time. So after we wrap this up, I want to go over just kind of a basic kit of what I think you need to get started, which I didn't do the last live stream either, and I think that would be beneficial. Okay, so we're just going to finish wrapping this real quick. The downside to using friction tape is that you can't see, and if you're using black thread, you can't see exactly if you're right next to the previous line. So sometimes you end up having to kind of inch it over a little bit because you'll see some of the friction tape exposed. But because it's black friction tape, you hardly ever see those instances. All right, so now I've reached the end of the friction tape, and this is where I'll trim off that extra tail. And then I use this as a thread puller. This is basically 7-ply, just like the black stuff I showed you for the gutty clubs. But I use this instead of the thread puller that you can buy on Hickory Golf Workshop. That's a handy tool, but I lost that thing probably, I don't know, 6 months into having it, and just started using thread like this, and find that this is all you really need. So I've cut the tail off. Now I'm just wrapping. I'm going to go 3-4 times around. That's all you really need to. You'll notice that the nap of the leather starts to sneak through the thread if you're not keeping really tight lines here. All right, that's good. Cut that, and then we're going to feed that through the loop here, and then we're going to pull. If the benefit of that thread puller is it's tied off, and it's got a little thing you put between your fingers, and you just yank it like that. But if you just take it in 2 fingers here, well, 3 fingers, 3 fingers and a thumb, you pull that through, you're good to go. And you can see that that's pretty good. Turn that off, and then that's done. Then, to do the whipping on this end, this is where the the holes on the bottom come in handy because you can put it up on the cradle over here, and then you've got this part sticking out. And again, just like before, though, I don't use that much thread on this end. Reason being, you've tacked this here. And the bit of whipping on this end, in my opinion, is more of an aesthetic thing than anything else. It's not really a functional thing because your tack should hold all that leather in. But I only go around, say, 2 or 3 times. Then I cut off my tail. I actually like to use these. Save those for leather. Grab my thread puller, and I'm just going to do 2 or 3 more. Gonna make them tight. Go 1 more. All right, that's actually 1 more than I probably should, because you can see right away when this starts to get thicker, and I like it to look thinner. Because again, it's an aesthetic thing, but that's fine. The one thing I'll mention on either end is if you do fewer than, I would say, 2, well, let's say fewer than 3 loops before you try to pull the thread back through, you may not have enough tension on the thread to keep this in place. So the more wraps you do, the tighter your thread's going to be when it gets pulled through. Also, though, keep in mind that the more wraps you do this way, the harder it is sometimes to pull that thread through, especially if you don't have anything to grab onto and you're just using this thread like I am. Sometimes, though, I'll get in a situation where I can't pull it through with my fingers, and I'll just put my pliers on, and then I'll pull it out like that. So there's that tip. That does that. Now you've got a finished grip, and this is ready to go. The only other step that I can probably show you, so at this point, I mean, this club still needs to have the pin replaced, but it's been reset with epoxy already, so this is going to happen later today off camera. But assume all that was done, and all we had left was just the shaft here. I believe it was in the first part of the live stream series here where I showed, after I take the head off and put it in the rust removal process, I'll take some number 2 00 steel wool to rough up the shaft and clean it up a little bit, and then I'll use this stuff. Grab it. I'll use this to restore the wood and just kind of revitalize it. This is Skidmore's Restoration Cream. There will be a link for this in the description for the video once I get all that stuff up there later this weekend. But I use this on the shaft before I actually send the club. If it's a beginner set for someone and I'm sending them the clubs, I'll actually put some of the Skidmores on the head itself and wipe it off and then put it in the box, because the beeswax that's in this Skidmore's Restoration Cream actually works as a rust inhibitor. So that's a benefit to it. Then if you had original grips and you didn't want to take the original grips off, but you just wanted to revitalize them a little bit, the Skidmore's works great on leather. So, I mean, it says it's infinitely useful. It's totally true. I mean, every part of the club, with the exception of suede, you can use this stuff on, and it works great, and it smells really good too. So I already did that to this shaft. The only other thing that I'll mention that I like to do, especially if somebody tells me that they want to play the clubs in any condition, they want to play them in situations where it might be raining, they're not worried about that. I'll give them some tips that I'll share with you in a second. But knowing that they're going to be playing this club in a situation where there may be some moisture or the shaft might be getting wet, I like to add shellac to the shaft, you know, probably six coats of it. And I'll admit, when I first got into hickory clubs, I didn't know anything about shellac. I bought a jar of Zinsers, or a can of Zinsers, I think it's Zinsers, but I didn't understand how to use it. I just didn't get it. Last year, while I was working on understanding how to make long nose clubs, I came across someone who was making their own shellac. and it got me curious, and it's super easy. It's crazy how easy it is to make your own shellac. Trying to see if I've got, yeah, I don't have it out right now, but I showed you the granules for the hide glue. Shellac also comes in a flake form. You can buy it in a bag, you can buy it on Amazon. What you do is you buy a bag of it in the color you want. This is blonde shellac, so it's not going to add any color to the shaft. It's just going to be kind of, you know, you'll see in a second. But what you do is you mix, there's a ratio, and I made a 1/4 pound cut here. If you just look this up on YouTube, you'll find a bunch of videos that show you how to do this. But all I did was mix the flake with Everclear. Pick this up at the liquor store, and it's 190 proof. I wouldn't drink it, but yeah, it makes a really great shellac. And you can make your own however much you want. I made this, so I made this back in April. I'm almost out. This is probably going to be the last bit of that I use. And you know, you'll notice when it starts to kind of lose its effectiveness, and you want to make a fresh batch then. But if you're not familiar with what shellac actually is, it's an excretion from a particular beetle, and it's, you know, the color of the flake is basically a result of what the beetle is eating and excreting on the trees. So you can get amber colored shellac, and I think, yeah, I've got amber colored flakes, and then I got the blonde flakes. I'm trying to find a paper towel to use here. But it smells good. And in fact, if you're kind of creeped out by the whole bug thing, which I don't know why you would be, shellac is on your cereal. They actually use shellac to kind of be a, kind of keep, you know, cereal from getting soggy, which I think is what Chevy Chase is working on. I think that's what Griswold's working on in Christmas Vacation. That's like his special additive. Not shellac, but something weird. But anyway, point is, shellac is great for providing a little bit of protection to the wood. So once this dries, and this is going to dry like within just a couple seconds, that's how you know you're using good shellac, by the way, is if you can go around your shaft. This is going to sound dirty. If you're going around the shaft and it dries within just a couple seconds, then that's a good sign. So basically what's happening is the grain alcohol is evaporating, and it's leaving behind the flake. And you can start to see already that's creating a bit of a sheen to the shaft. And the more you do this, like I can already apply the second coat because it's already dry. So just gonna keep doing this all the way around. I noticed I got a little bit of residue there. I gotta get that off. So I'm gonna stop there because I don't wanna shellac over that residue, but you get the picture. Do that as many times as you want. The more you do it, the more of a buildup you'll put on the wood to kind of give it some moisture resistance. Now, that all said, if you do end up playing a club in the rain and you get it wet, when you get home, you want to dry it off as soon as you can. Let it sit outside of your golf bag so that it can dry in the air. Don't put it in front of a heater or anything. Just let it dry in the ambient air. And then I like to take these guys, Rem oil wipes, or if you have the Skidmores on hand, you can use the Skidmores too. But if you get a little bit of flash rust on the club head itself, just take some 000 steel wool, clean off that rust, and then put an application of the Skidmores on it, or take a Rem oil wipe, which you can pick these up at, you can pick these up at Walmart in the gun aisle. That'll give you some protection. The Rem oil wipes are silicone, so you're basically giving the outside, or the club silicone protection. And that's all you do. You know, just make sure you maintain the clubs that way, you know, dry them off, and then you can play them again. The suede, if it gets wet, you could try to put a suede protector on this. Oh, and I haven't showed you how to get rid of these ribs real quick. We'll do that in a second. But yeah, I mean, the suede will dry. And if you make your own, if you cut your own grips, then you can have extras around and you don't have to worry about, you know, deteriorating. But anyway, what I want to show you now is just kind of a quick way, and this will happen on its own when you start playing in the club, by the way. But if you want to start out with less rib, this is a burnisher, and I just take it and just kind of smooth out. See how the ribs are laying down there? Just work your way up and down. Anywhere the rib is more noticeable than you want it to be. And again, as soon as you start playing in the club, your hands are going to do this anyway. This just expedites the whole process. And if you really want to figure out how to make these more seamless, like I said, check out Gavin's video on his Time Warp Golf YouTube channel. But I'm going to stop right there. But you get the picture. That's, you know, a lot smoother, but there's still some rib there. You know, I'm pretty satisfied with that. So that would basically take you to the point where your clubs are finished. What I do then is I measure them. I measure the swing weight again. I measure the loft. I have I don't know if it's showing up here. I've shown it on my channel before, but this guy right here, I picked it up on eBay. The guy who makes them, I think, is based in Illinois, and he puts them on his eBay store less frequently than he used to, but I think they're still available. If they are, I'll try to find it and link to it. But yeah, I just put the specs on a piece of tape. I put that back here, and then the club is ready to play. So with that, I'm going to put you back on the tripod at this point, and we're going to go back over to our shaft extension. Oh, let me just turn you around this way. By this point, that's as dry as it's going to get. So if it's still loose, then we know we got to, you know, I got to reset it. But we'll just test it. Oh, that's solid. Oh, I spoke too soon. See, I didn't get as good of a connection up on the top here. So it is moving more. In fact, I can see that there isn't really any glue right underneath the tip there. So I'm going to have to, you know, heat this up. I may as well just show you now how easy that is. Before I do it, I'll just kind of run you through what I was hoping to show you. So assuming that this was as tight as we wanted it, what you would do at this point, we got lucky here because this part of the shaft and this extension are almost the identical width. You don't have a lot of extra material hanging off the sides here. But what I would do is first clean off the extra gummy bit of hide glue that's just kind of sneaking out on the sides here. And then I would take the less abrasive side of my 4-in-1 rasp and just go along the sides, any place where there's some extra material kind of hanging off, just to kind of smooth out all of the connection here. And I'd go all the way around. I'd go up here, because you notice if you didn't do anything about this particular spot right here, you might be able to feel that under the leather of the grip. So I would just file that down and make that flush to the rest of the shaft. And then, you know, your next step would be figuring out what your length is going to be. So, you know, you've got the end of your scare right there. And we know we want a 1/2 inch of length. So probably like about that. I would make a line right here, cut the excess shaft off, and then you've got the extra length that you want. And your grain orientation, whoops, get in there. Your grain orientation's going the right way, where everything, well, there you go. Everything's moving this way. So that would be that. But unfortunately, we're going to have to reset that. So I'm going to get the heat gun out. I picked this up at Harbor Freight. I think this is $10. It's starting to fall apart a little bit. It's not working as well as it used to, but it still does enough. It does a good enough job. I don't need to buy a new one yet. That's kind of the thing with Harbor Freight, is if you want a tool that you're going to use all the time, buy a quality tool. And I suppose I probably should have bought a quality heat gun then, because I use this all the time. But this is held up. But if you want to buy a tool that you're only going to use a few times, then there's an argument to be made that you buy the lesser quality but cheaper Harbor Freight one. Okay, low setting. And we're just going to heat this up. Probably don't even need it in the vise anymore. I'm going to take it out of the vise. And I think in my haste to try to show you how quick this would set up, I didn't do a good enough job of making sure that the end was attached properly. We'll do this in real time. We'll see how long it takes for the hide glue to loosen up. I like to do it on the low setting because, you know, you can char the wood pretty quick if you're not careful doing it on the high setting. Also, proximity of heat gun to wood can make a difference in charring or not charring, so I'm trying to keep an eye on that as well. Starting to see the edges of the hide glue get a little softer, kind of bubbling up a little bit. I haven't been counting, but I usually try to do it for a minute or so and then test it and see if it'll come apart easily. You don't want to try to pry too much. If it doesn't come off relatively easy, then stop and heat it up some more, because you could easily, you know, break off a piece and then you'll have to start a new, probably have to start a new, well, hopefully it wouldn't happen on the shaft itself. But yeah, you just want to avoid prying. That goes for any time you're trying to separate two pieces this way. Just take your time and be patient, and make sure that you've loosened it up with heat so that you're not prying the pieces apart and potentially splitting the fibers. Because part of the issue here is that, you know, we're heating up the sides, but the interior part's not really getting as much heat. So, you know, you can try to work up and down like this. We're basically just trying to get this loose enough so that we can split them apart without splitting them. Let's just test that. I don't think that's enough yet, but recommend putting a glove on. You never know what's going to be hot. I'm just going to show. Oh, that came apart. So there we go. So there's our two pieces. Once I'm off camera, I'll go back to the drawing board with it and reset these two. Like I was saying, though, earlier, like if it was just a matter of, you know, you had a couple spots, and I can see now, it's hard to show you with both pieces in my hand. I can see where this tip didn't have really any glue on it. So yeah, but you start to set these back together in just a couple seconds. See, they start to, as it cools, it starts to pull together again. So hide glue really is pretty cool. It's just a matter of being patient and learning how to get the consistency you want. And yeah, okay. So I mentioned earlier that I was going to show you just kind of a basic kit if you didn't have any tools whatsoever and you wanted to get into restoring clubs. So let's do that. Let me zoom out. I already mentioned this guy, but I think this is the essential pickup first. Get this cradle or figure out how to make one And it's going to save you a lot of effort in holding the clubs awkwardly and when you're trying to do some of these things. You've seen me just use this for whipping. Just this act alone, being able to turn, spin the club like that, that's nice. And then, having this here so that all the thread's not laying all over the bench, that's nice as well. So yeah, I definitely recommend that. I think that is a key purchase, one of the first key purchases. So you've got that. Let me look around and see what else I use all the time. As far as pins are concerned, having an anvil or something close to it, that's a railroad tie piece. But this is what I use to hammer out, or actually hammer in the pins. I think you need to have something like this. If you've got a vise like this, that piece might work, though it's a little awkward having all of this here and trying to, maneuver your club around that. But I think that eventually is going to be a key piece that you need. 4-in-1 rasp like this is handy for a lot of different things. I use this primarily to size down the cone of a hosel on the shaft when I need to make it fit a different club head. So that's an essential piece. These are super cheap. You can pick these up anywhere. I've got, that one's a new Nicholson, which aren't as good as the old Nicholsons. This is an old vintage Nicholson, and as beat up as it looks, it's way better than the new one. And it's a little larger. Let's see. When you're knocking heads off of, you've removed the pin. Well, actually, let's do it in order. You want to remove the pin, you got to make sure you have punches. So the two that I think are essential, 1/8 inch, same size as the pins. I think both of these are the same, 1/8 inch. This one's got a little bit of longer stem to it though, so that it can get into the actual hosel. This is the one I use just to start driving out the pin. So once I've found the pin and I use the regular hammer and this to get it started, I'll throw it up on the cradle and use this one to finish driving it out. If you want a cheap thing to try to find pins, this is a plastic jeweler's loop. I picked this up off of Amazon. You can get these any hardware store. Make sure you're getting 1/8 inch. This is more of a specialty one. I'm trying to remember what the size of this one is. Looking here. Can't find it. Oh, 332. So this is thinner diameter than the 1/8, but this is nice sometimes when you're just trying to, you don't have enough room. Like sometimes the 1/8 inch pinholes are just a little smaller than 1/8 inch in the cone itself, and it's helpful to have something a little smaller to get in there and drive out the rest of the pin. So there's that. So anyway, what I was going to say earlier though is once you get the pin out and you need to remove the head, having either a rawhide mallet like this, something that you can hit metal with, that's good. Or if you just have a regular old wood mallet, that's fine too. I use this heavier duty guy for when I've got a really stubborn head that won't come off. And then I just use this one for everything else and just, tap the head, it usually comes off. So that's a pretty good essential tool to have. Obviously you want some kind of bench surface to work on. This I picked up on from Harbor Freight, and this is the second one of these I've had now. And the first one I had was okay. I was using it as it was sold, so I had all the drawers in it. But I was finding that all of these dog holes would let material and debris fall into the drawers, and that's I'm cleaning out the drawers all the time. So I finally realized when I bought this one that the drawers are stupid. You don't need the drawers. If you've got something like that, I got two of these. These are also from Harbor Freight. That's all I need to hold all the drawer type stuff. And so I took the drawers out, and what that allowed me to do was put another piece of, I think this is 1/4 inch pine that I put behind the front-facing part of this. So now I've got a bigger lip to actually attach clamps to. And so now, because I don't have drawers here, I've got this length to do any kind of, if I wanted to have a board, this is more so for regular woodworking, but if I'm working on something where I need to joint a piece of wood with the plane, with the joiner plane, I can attach that piece all the way along this length using the Harbor Freight clamps to do that. So it made this bench way more versatile to do that. And I also ended up screwing it into the studs to the wall. So it is solid. Like, that ain't going anywhere. It's not budging. It doesn't rack. It doesn't do anything when I mess around with it. So yeah, having a good, sturdy, stable work bench is key as well. Let's see. We already kind of mentioned the vise for the anvil aspect to it, but the vise just for holding anything, that's pretty key. Yeah, and then, at that point, if you do the shaft extension, then you obviously want to get probably a number 3 or a number 4 plane. My Stanleys are up there on the wall. I sort of started collecting them, so I got the 3, the 4, the 5, and then above that is a 6. But the only ones that I use for club stuff is the 3 and the 4. But yeah, trying to think. I'll go over the tools that I use for cutting my grips in that video, which you'll see soon on the channel. I already talked about the F clamps that I get from Menards. That's these guys. Yeah, I guess the pin material. Yeah, I'll talk about that real quick. I got 2 different kinds here, and in my videos, I've only shown you I've only done brass, but I recently started using plain steel, and plain steel, 48-inch length of plain steel from Home Depot costs $4.94 compared to, I think it's $8 for a 36-inch length of brass at Ace Hardware. I can't find brass at Home Depot. They haven't had it in stock forever. So I only bought the plain steel out of necessity because I couldn't find the brass rod. But I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed with plain steel. The benefit to plain steel is that if you're a big aesthetic guy and you don't want to see the pin, let me show you an example of one that I just pinned. You can't see the pin. It disappears completely. So that's good and bad. If you don't want to ever, if you want to do this for aesthetics only and you're not worried about ever having to take this head off again, then that's obviously the way to go because you can't see the pin. But you can't see it probably, well, you can see it on this side better. I didn't finish making this as flush and seamless as I could have on purpose because I want to be able to at least leave one side visible so that you don't have to search around for the pin. You can also see some of the Skidmores on here still. So yeah, I left it like that. And if you notice, like when you see an old club that hasn't been restored in probably 120 years, sometimes the pins look like that anyway. So I thought it was cool because it's kind of a period correct feature, but it's also a very functional one in order to kind of get the best of both worlds where you've got a seamless pin. Oh, I got a question here. Hold on. I got one really cool mid-iron. Not sure how old it is, but it's my hometown name. It's not letting me read the rest of the... Okay, I tell you what. I can answer that question at length through an email. So send me an email with the picture of the club that you're looking at, thehickoryhacker@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can with an answer to that. But anyway, like I was saying, like, you can get the best of both worlds where you've got a seamless pin. You could even do this, like I probably should have done this the other way around, where I've got a seamless, no pin visible on this side, but it is on this side, because this is the side you see when you're playing. And that'd be kind of cool, because then it looks like a completely clean, flush club that's never been restored, but then if you do need to restore it, you've got a visible pin on this side. So that's why, also, it's a hell of a lot cheaper than brass, apparently, and more readily available all of a sudden. So, yeah, I'm kind of a convert to plain steel. I don't think I'll stop using the brass, but lately, at least here on Long Island, I'm not finding brass rod 1/8 inch. Oh, by the way, this is 1/8 inch. I don't know if I mentioned that, but they're both 1/8 inch. And yeah, the one thing is the steel is harder than the brass, so it takes a little bit more time um, filing down. But it's not any harder, really. I mean, it's a little bit harder to cut and basically trim off using this. But it wasn't enough that I felt like I couldn't use the tools. I guess I haven't shown you these tools yet. These are super cheap, snips here, and then a different oriented snip. I use both of these to cut the rods, which you saw in the, I want to say it's live stream part 2 for this series. But yeah, I'm going to start using plain steel more often, and I recommend you try it too if you can't find brass. I'm not going to say anything positive about aluminum. So if you ask me about aluminum pins, I'm going to tell you to stay away from them because they're a pain to try to remove. They're just too soft, and you end up having to drill them out. Let me get back on camera here at this point. So I'm gonna close this out. Okay. Oh, get down here. All right. Well, I think that went a lot better than the previous time I tried to film what I just showed you today. I hope it turns out better in the recording. I saw that I think we had like 8 to 10 viewers the whole time, which is awesome. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a decent amount for me with the live stream. So I appreciate you for tuning in live. And yeah, I was trying, obviously wasn't keeping up with any questions that may have come through. So if you did ask a question in the chat and I didn't answer it or address it, send me an email, thehickoryhacker@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you with an answer. And if there was a part of this process or any of the previous 2 live streams that you didn't understand or that you've tried to do on your own but you're just having a hard time with, reach out to me about that too, and I'll try to help you work through it. What I showed you was basically the most of what I come across, but that doesn't mean there's going to be situations that I haven't encountered yet that you will, and then you'll have issues and try to figure out how to navigate those. So I'm happy to help you however I can with that. And finally, I'm going to close this out by saying check out the web store at hickoryhacker.com. Like I said during this live stream, I'm going to have at a certain point probably 8 beginner sets for pre-35 clubs on the website, and those just need to be photographed basically right now. You saw a couple of those that I was putting grips on today or messing with that I still need to put a pin in. But I would say by the end of next week, I'm going to have a good number of clubs, sets on the website for beginner sets. So if you've ever been interested in trying to get into hickory golf affordably and playing with authentic clubs, I'd like to think that I'm your guy to go to for those sets. So yeah, check the web store. If you don't see anything there that you're interested in, but you're looking for something particular, or you want to see what I've got for beginner sets that I haven't posted on the site yet, email me, thehickoryhacker@gmail.com. If you're interested in grips, I've got the grips that I used on these clubs today on the website as well for sale. Yeah, I think that's the end of the commercial. That's all I got for you guys. That pretty much concludes then the Hickory Golf Club Restoration live stream in real time series. I'll bring you guys back into the shop to see what I'm working on occasionally. But I think at this point I've exhausted all the different things that I know how to do with restoring just a club and trying to take it from the flea market to the golf course. So yeah, maybe I'll just kind of let you guys watch me one day while I'm doing other stuff, and nothing necessarily tutorial wise, but just kind of like looking over my shoulder. If you are interested in more of that kind of content, I definitely recommend you become a hacker backer, because I'm more active on that side of the channel with the live streams than I have been on the public side. And we're in the middle of a live stream series on the Hackerbacker side, where I'm showing you how I make my Wolf long nose clubs. So that's not a good example. Whoops. Right now we're working on this head, and I'm going to pick this series up again next week, Wednesday. So Wednesdays are the day that I do that. It's usually, depending on what else is going on, I try to do one of those every other week. So like I said, if you want to become a Hackerbacker and keep up with what I'm working on in the workshop on a more regular basis through live streams, definitely consider becoming a Hackerbacker either through Patreon or through YouTube channel membership. And right now, YouTube channel membership might be the easiest way to do it because everything's kind of seamless on this side of things. But yeah, if you're already in Patreon, I won't turn your money away over on that side either. Okay, I think that's it. Not working off any notes, so I probably forgot something I want to mention, but I'm pretty satisfied with that. So I thank you again for tuning in and for your continued support. I get emails all the time from people thanking me for doing this, and it's every time I get one of those emails, it's both surprising and very gratifying. So I appreciate that a lot. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks, folks. Take care.